role that we as a profession, as an industry play is definitely changing, and we are looking into our clients' businesses in ways that we've never done before.
Mm-hmm.
We're having to be so much smarter as a group. We're having to draw on so many more different disciplines in order to make that happen. But it's because of how much how the doors have opened into those brands. You know, things flowing out and coming back in. You have so many more channels that you have to really keep a close eye on.
Yeah, and that is the future, isn't it?
It is.
It's the
Absolutely.
brand stuff. I mean, we have to become better brand stewards for our clients because they're going to do this stuff by themselves. You know, unfortunately, they're going to look at the cost of social media consulting and the management, the internal management stuff, and go, we're going to do this on our own.
Well, that's always been the case with traditional media here too. So it's like there's always been a lot of companies here that wanted to keep everything in house. And the more complicated it becomes, actually, the more chance that we have as a communications agency, because that's probably the word we have to use now. You have because you've got so many people that you can service them in different ways and different approaches, that they probably can't know it all anymore. So they feel more comfortable giving some of their services away to the communication agency.
Are you fielding more calls? Like, are people, I mean, there's sort of the economics of it, but are you sensing that people are finally getting away from we're going to do it ourselves
I think so.
mentality?
It's been a funny roller coaster ride, right? At first it was the social media, who needs that? That's crazy. And then it was get me some. I think now we're seeing a little more of okay, I think we tried a little. We're not sure.
It's growing up a little bit now.
Yeah.
Well, you look like there's a solution to it if you present right. They haven't really touched it too much. Some clients, let's say, and then all of a sudden you tell them that you're managing social media for these number of clients, and you're actually going deep and managing the voice of the messaging, and they go, wow, you can do all that. So it becomes an in to that company, a backdoor kind of in to that company through social media. Start to work with them there, and then expand what you do with them. But back to your point though about expanding into the other areas of like HR consulting and what you were talking about. When we start to do that, we start to compete with the CA firms. The CA firms do everything but marketing, but some of them now are starting to do marketing, and they actually use different terminology than we do. They don't use marketing plan, and they have somewhat different terminology, and they're 10 times larger than the largest advertising firms. So that's a real scary thing, is if they start to take marketing in and to fit with all the rest of the stuff, or if we start to take the rest of the stuff in, we're going to be up against competitors that are 10 times our size,
Now, but is that an opportunity to go to the CA firms or whatever those might be and say, look, we'll manage this component and partner up? Is that happening?
I would think it'd be an opportunity, but I haven't seen it happen. And it's on my list to go and investigate.
Well, because it's call it consolidation. Like, everything consolidates at some point. It grows up, it consolidates, and then it grows a bit more, right?
Yeah.
Is this the evolution of consolidation for, not necessarily maybe the wrong term here, but for agencies or marketing or communications firms to say, you know what, we need to take on more things to offer clients, which means that leads us to maybe we need to be looking at who else is out there that we can either partner with, acquire, be acquired, whatever the case is.
It raises some really fundamental questions, because one of the challenges that we're facing these days is trying not to become a mile wide and an inch deep, because it's always new stuff to add, and there comes a point where you're not doing it well anymore. Okay. And even in terms of partnering, you have to be really careful how far you extend your reach, because you can get to the point in terms of the scope of work that you're doing through partnerships where you're actually losing touch of the thing that you do well, and the thing where the value is that you're supposed to add. And you made a point a minute ago that I thought was really interesting, and that was talking about being stewards of our good brand stewards. That's even something where we have to be very, very careful. I read an interesting article a while back talking about the risk that our clients are taking when they abdicate their brand to their agency. I mean, you want to always be working in their best interest, but particularly with all of the new media opportunities with social and everything, there's so much opportunity for agencies to go deeper and deeper and deeper that our clients are starting to say, well, you manage our brand for us. which is a good thing for the agency in a sense. At the same time, when a company abdicates its brand beyond the point where it's healthy, it ceases to be in touch with who it really is. I know when we do we've had some engagements where we've had the opportunity to really work with staff a lot to help the organization as a whole understand the role that each person plays in building and strengthening that brand. As that becomes as that flows into the agency, there's a risk that clients lose control of their brands. Agencies are trying to do the best thing, but what if we run ahead and lose, and the organization gets lost behind us? And that is happening in certain instances.
Yeah, and on that point, and I think you see it on a global scale with some of the big global brands more so, where there are those concerns, and it's where I think the legal and contractual side of it becomes greater. You know, and people, you know, sometimes in smaller markets don't think they need the formality of the contract or as much a formality in it. But yeah, it is important when you're putting your business on the line. It's absolutely important. But I think, you know, from our standpoint, fundamentally, when we go in and talk to clients about their brand or their company, it's really taking their words and helping to articulate it.
Yeah.
Because they know it. Let's face it, they know it. They know their company better than we do. But we're not drinking the Kool-Aid every day. Right? So we can come in with that objective third party and help them. I think that, you know, potentially the days of marketing firms or ad agencies of being that truly that external marketing department where we do 90% of your marketing for you, those might be gone. But the days of us coming in as that bona fide sober second thought are a huge opportunity in front of us.
Is there? I want to come back to this because it really to me it changes the whole outlook as to really what you're becoming. But step back and break it apart a little bit. There's like this. There's your small, and I don't want to call them mom and pop shops, but I mean, we're in Winnipeg. Just lots of small businesses. How does a small business who says I can barely afford any advertising, so I'm gonna do, I'm gonna do Facebook, and we've had customers say to us, we're not doing any more advertising, we're just gonna manage our Facebook page, and that's how we're gonna build our business. Okay. How do you sort of take those small businesses and say we have no budget, but there's always a budget for something because there's waste or whatever the case might be? Because the larger companies sort of get it and put it aside sometimes.
Arguable.
Is there a break though? Like, I mean, how do you deal with those? Like, if we were to split them, how do you deal with the small business, and then how do you work with a larger organization?
I think you try to communicate that they need a plan or a strategy, and so when that strategy is being developed, you go into it knowing what budget limitations the past they face. So you build that strategy knowing that you're not going to be doing some CTV 6 o'clock news as one of their tactics, and it's something that parts they can initiate themselves, other things they're going to use you or someone else, like in the basement or your firm, and following a plan. So many clients will like, I want to do this, I want to do that, but it's not based on anything, it's a one-off thing. Well, I'll just take your money now.
Yeah. There is the issue of scale too.
And most
right?
businesses can afford to have somewhat of a strategy developed.
Okay.
I don't think we found that really online is any more affordable for us to do for our clients. It's a different allocation of the dollars. So really for the small businesses who potentially weren't a fit to work with us in the traditional sense, we still might struggle to find a good fit to work with them in the online sense. Like, I don't think the change of media necessarily lets us help them that much more because they're still struggling with the same.
There's a lot of work
value.
behind the social media.
Yeah.
That it's probably more work to do it right than it is to say run a television campaign and shoot it.
It's more labor intensive.
Yeah.
Well, and for us, that's where our
job
role
is
has
never
changed
done.
beyond social media.
Yeah.
If we just look at Facebook advertising as a case, we used to book a print ad for the Free Press or whatever it is, and you open the paper up, made sure your ad looked pretty good. If it didn't, you could call your rep and complain about registration or whatever it might be. Now, our media buyer is probably the person whose role has shifted the most. She's monitoring that online ad daily, and not just once a day, but continually running A/B tests, seeing what's which ad is performing better demographically in different markets, why are these things happening? So
And then adjust on the fly.
so that's where our time commitment has really changed. And then, yeah, coming back to the creative team, to the account director saying, hey, this ad's not performing for X, Y, or Z, can we find a solution? So we're recreating the same ad several times over the course of a campaign, which is great because we're seeing increased performance, but it's just maybe
Increased fees.
a different kind of set of fees that
That's-
go along with it.
Pretty much Coon's life, isn't it? Every day checking where
Yes. Well, kind
the online's at.
Well, and that would, because I mean, that's, I mean, if we're just online and social right now, but that's, I mean, how do you manage, like, how do you explain to somebody, like, we're gonna have to be changing this, and there's a cost associated with it too, right?
that's the other thing. Not everyone is ready for this. You have some clients that can only have money for some one execution, and that would be their budget.
Right.
Other clients are like the larger clients are more open to that idea, but not everyone can do it.
There might be some skepticism out there too, because if you think back to the, Leighton mentioned this earlier to me about the .com implosion. We were focused quite heavily on building websites, and we had this relationship with IBM that took us into the States to build websites with them. We did a whole bunch of great sites, but it just dried up like that instantaneously. Once the .com implosion happened, they put a freeze on all hiring, put a freeze on all projects.
No
Then,
more
then,
outsourcing.
then all the clients who were just kind of getting to the point where they're thinking that a website is more than a brochure fell off. So then it all went away. Not completely away, and then it came back slowly. Like the .com days, implosion days were really tough for online work. And so people must be wondering, is the same thing going to happen with Facebook and with Twitter? And, you know, and we always have to get ready for these. We always have to study them. Like Google Wave comes along. Okay, we got to study Google Wave. Everyone's going to want Google Wave, and it dies within 6 months or however quickly it died. Google Plus comes along, and they're all saying, well, Google Wave died, so why should we learn Google Plus? Yet it's lasting and so forth. But I don't know. It's either into the word or centralization, and I think that a lot of that's going to happen in the social media world and in the online advertising world too, because it's just there's so much going on. You can't manage it. You know.
But I think that, you know, small or large business, I think what social media has done is it's opened up the door. I mean, whether you want to call them new buzzword areas or so on, for the new bar in marketing, whether it be through new avenues, whether that avenue may be the experiential side or the call it partner marketing side, aka sponsorship. We just keep hearing this word partner marketing, and another new buzzword to add to our tickle trunk. But what it's done is people want to get information. And I think that when we're sitting down, we're just with some clients in Toronto 2 weeks ago, and they're saying it's more for us about getting the information from the consumer than it is about sponsoring something. You know, what can we do, small or large company, what can we do to get more information about our potential consumers and then speak to them directly? Whereas in the past, you've had that real one-way conversation. Whereas now, the social media has opened up this whole two-way conversation. How do you do that through other means outside of social media? You know, but it's based on the pillars of what you got out of social media. Is you get these intimate conversations with people and you get intimate information. I mean, the fact that you can go on Facebook and find out, you know, what ballpark age you are, if you're married or not, male or female, how many kids, you know, where you work, how educated you are, and then you can target market to that, great. Whereas, you know, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago,
Yeah.
you were throwing out, you might have done a little bit of market research and said, okay, this is your target market, there you go. But if you're a small company, you can still get into things like the partner marketing and so on to learn more about who you're marketing to.
So the small companies, maybe instead of trying to say, oh, we're not going to do anything, or we're going to do it ourselves, focus in on, okay, how do we start the conversation?
Absolutely, and I think it's a plan too. I can't remember who mentioned it around here. You might not have the dollars and cents for a company like one of ours to come to the table and say, we can do this for you. But if someone says, well, I'm on Facebook, okay, what's your plan? I'm on Twitter, okay, what's your plan? Maybe we can help you with, here's the plan. You can go execute it if that's all your budget, you know, will hold. But you need that fundamental plan of how that conversation is going to evolve.
Yeah, I think at the very least, we can provide clients, large or small, with a roadmap, a general roadmap of where they're going and how, what the general plan is to get there. Something they can refer back to make sure they're still kind of on the right path. And something that allows for measurement and adjustment, but certainly something that has kind of a longer term in mind. I think that's providing value as well, as opposed to just, letting someone kind of, spin their wheels because, don't necessarily think that there's anything larger, in play here.
Yeah, this stuff has opened up the doors, right? People are doing it themselves, whether we like it or not. I mean, there's probably a role in terms of education, helping them along.
Well, and the thing is that there's no cookie cutter for that stuff.
Nope.
No,
You're
you
right.
can't say this is how we're gonna
right.
we're gonna do Facebook here because that's how Facebook works
Well,
there.
because it worked for someone doesn't mean it's
Yeah.
going to work for you, right?
Yeah.
So there is still this DIY kind of approach to it that let's like it's a series of measured experiments, really, right? So we're going to see if this worked, and this measured experiment worked really well over here. So, but at the end of the day, it's still relatively new. I mean, we're talking 5 years old, 6
Yeah.
years old, right? I mean, no one has all the answers yet.
Well, and I know for us from the time we started doing, since we're talking social media as a strategy, till now, we look back at when we were first doing that and just kind of, oh my goodness, how could we have been so naive? Because there was, here's these cardinal rules of how you do this. Well, okay, so it worked in case number one. You try and apply that same thing in case number two with a different brand. Oh, it doesn't work. And you have to look at, what is the mix. And so in terms of doing strategy, there's a lot of opportunity there for us as an industry to provide intelligence. And if it is a matter of, you can pay for strategy, but you can't pay for execution. A good strategy is worth way more anyway. So, but let's really then do it really well, and not just don't just go online and read a book.
Right.
We actually bring someone in who is capable of analyzing your situation and doing it well, and then you're going to get really good value for those dollars, and then you can potentially action that yourself.
Well, yeah, and it also comes down to knowing your audience, right? I mean,
Yeah.
companies should know their customers better than any of us, right? So let's get those insights. As I think someone said here, they have the information already. It's really just a matter of pulling that information out and presenting it back to them in a way that is usable and in a way they can act on.
Does so take things like experiential marketing, event sponsorship, partner marketing, is that the new term out there? Those, how do you blend that? Because if you want information from people, there's social, but and there's a big crowd on social, but not everybody's talking, and so there's the comment of, well, only people only put negative information, right? So whether you're doing a comment on a blog or information or a story, the only time anything ever gets put up there is because it's negative. It gives the average person the opportunity to vent unaided. They can do what they want, say what they want, to a degree. But you want to still learn about them. So where does events and experiential and other things fall into the whole mix?
Well, I think, two examples that probably be near and dear to hockey fans right now. One, if you look at the NHL and their continued drive to they want to truly find out who their fan is so they can market themselves a little bit better. So you look at the NHL All-Star Game and their whole fan experience center that they had, or NHL Face-Off that came to town at the beginning of the hockey season. When you wanted to go into one of their cubicles and do, whether it be the hardest shot or the stick handling drills or whatever, they had nice little pods with a covered up iPad, and you had to put in a little bit of information about yourself and opt into them talking to you via their email marketing campaigns.
Yeah.
But in that information, it was, little things like male or female, where do you live, age range,
Favorite
those sorts of
team,
things.
yeah.
Yeah, favorite team. So they can speak to you more directly about that. It might be masked in an experience, and that you're almost, you don't feel bad about it. It's like, yeah, I really want to do this. I want to see if I can shoot the puck harder than Dustin Byfuglien. Yeah, let's just quickly get through that, put that, and get into it. All of a sudden, they've got what they need to come back at you, and you've said yes. You've opened the door. On the reverse side, you look at at Bud's, the execution of Bud on whether it be their fan flash mob around the Super Bowl with hockey or the fan bird. I mean, the emotional connection that they made to Manitobans, and if you look at the sheer shift in sales volume in this province by brand is insane, because people have bought into this whole experiential side. I mean, that the YouTube videos that they got up, but people were posting them on their Facebook site. Well, then people can go back into that Facebook site and see who was forwarding it along. You know, so it was a backdoor way through tugging at the heartstring to go and see that information on a broader base. You know, and obviously tugging at the heartstring of the Jets, but
But so that goes to back to the foundation of its emotion. You create the emotional connection, and you will, no matter what it has, whether it's print or anything.
it's never. I don't believe it's ever changed.
Oh
I
yeah,
think
the
that-
story has to remain intact, right? Yeah, I mean, I think it's just making sure you got the right narrative, the right story, apply that over multiple channels, right? In a way that's relevant to each one of those channels, and making sure you have a feedback.
And social media and experiential marketing really complement each other so well, because the average person's Facebook page is not reflective of their real life. It's reflective of their ideal life. And so if they're capturing, if you're giving them an experience that gives them a certain level of prestige or cool factor or credibility, they're going to want to share that because it completes this sort of perception of themselves. So the trick, I think, is to find something that is connected to them, that gives them the certain status that they want for whatever reason, and they're going to take that story, your experience, and share it to their group. And that's a huge difference with the demographic behind me as compared to the demographic ahead of me. My parents wouldn't ever share a location, for instance, in any form where they've been with a photo, and I think my generation's fairly comfortable with it. The generation following me, that's common. That's just what we're used to. So it's an assumption. Yeah.
Well, it's using that as my parents, when the Safeway Club card came out, I'm not giving them my phone number. They'll know what I bought. Now, kids, like it's everywhere, right? Just phones are everywhere, and device. I don't even call them phones anymore. They're mobile devices, and it's just stuff is out there.
And your parents probably have a card now, don't they?
Pardon?
Do your parents have a Safeway card now?
Oh yeah, because they want the points.
Yeah.
Right? But so let's. I want to touch on that a bit because on two things. Ryan, you brought up the Budweiser shift. Do you think the average consumer really realizes? I mean, they have fun with the whole
water
Bud
in there,
can and well, yeah, and even some of the stuff they do during intermission at games and all these things. Do you think general public is seeing that? Really, what they've done is they said we're going to buy into this as the Jets. But what they've done behind the scenes, because they said if we're going to spend this money to invest in the sponsorship of the team, we got to get that back. And we're going to get that back through market share. And the beer market share, I'm going to suggest, is probably one of the biggest things to shift because of everybody's loyalties. But here they've done it, right? Or they seem to have done it. You would have that information more than I would. They seem to have done it, and they've done it through this experiencing all these things that go along with it, and they've utilized all of the tools that you guys are talking about.
But you just look at on that example. Just look at the neighborhood around you. Like, I know that there's some folks that live around us that I've been to their houses to watch a hockey game before, and whatever the case may be, and it's been, Heineken or Corona, Sleeman. You'll see a very premium selection in their fridge. Whether they buy it just because people are coming over or not, it's a whole other story. But in the since that fan group came out, going over to these same people's houses, and they got Bud in their fridge. Anyway, even if they bought 2 cases, the shift that can do in the market is crazy.
The 2 cases that they never bought before,
They never bought.
multiplied by however many people, right?
Hey, I bought my first case of Budweiser when the thing came out, and I worked for a competitor for 10 years, so. Just because, but it wasn't even that. It wasn't even because I wanted it. Is people in my family wanted the souvenir.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the other side of it, right? It's that emotional thing that they're tying into. Is maybe you didn't have the $300 to go get a jersey, for the first year, but you had a hat, you had a T-shirt, maybe you wanted that can that went with it. I mean, it's a total package approach for them.
So somebody's going to read that or see this and say, well, yeah, that's Budweiser. They've got millions of dollars to throw at it, so of course they're going to do that. How do I do that with $5,000, $10,000, $20,000? How do that's what you guys are there to.
But the Old Spice spots that everybody loves, the 200 of them, they're all done in 48 hours. Maybe some further ones done later, but the original launch was 48 hours worth of filming and going nuts and doing all these things and round the clock. So how much can that really cost?
But I also heard and that Old Spice didn't actually see that big of a market shift. You know, everybody loved them.
Yeah.
So
But they didn't buy.
they didn't buy
No, they
it,
didn't buy
but they loved the stuff. It was on YouTube and millions, all the hits. And Mustafa is, you know, now world famous and making more money than he did as a football player, but the market shift didn't happen. So you take Budweiser, said, hey, we're gonna do this, and we're seeing a market share increase. Same, but on an exponentially larger scale. And they didn't see that. So how do you gauge
There was
that?
that Chevy Sonic campaign that happened. Did you guys see that? Where that one actually started in social media. It was all about firsts, right? So, you know, your first road trip, right? In Chevy Sonic and so on and so forth. And it was a social media campaign. People were asked to take video and put it in, and went up on YouTube, and eventually got so many hits that they decided to create a more traditional campaign around it. So this one actually flipped it on its head. You know, typically you build a traditional campaign in the brand and then flesh it out through social and watch the conversation happen. This one was totally backwards. So maybe starting light, you know, and building your customer base.
Start conversations.
Yeah.
Look at Boomberg. Anyone know Boomberg on, was that Stafford? I think it is?
Sherbrooke.
Sherbrooke.
But they're coming to Valentine too. Yeah.
Oh, are they? That's awesome. Hey, we were just talking about thinking of the location, but you look at that place, they had a fan base before they even opened the door.
What are they?
It's basically a vegan, it's vegan, is it?
Vegetarian
vegetarian
burgers.
vegan burgers. But they put on their Facebook page the building of their restaurant and sort of the whole lead up, and they had, and I can't believe that it cost them a lot of money, but they had a bona fide following before they even opened their door. And, you know, I give them all the credit in the world. I mean, I know people in our office were talking about it, people like you were talking, hey, have you heard of this thing or whatever? And it was just about the building of this little new outside the box shop.
I think in reality, though, one of the things that work for them is they're very good communicators. Like social media, I'm always surprised when I go to a conference for our industry and they've got the tweet stream going, and you see some people are very good tweeters. Like you either laugh or it's insightful, and some people are just recyclers of content. It's not interesting, and the same thing for business. Can anybody do social media? Yes, but some people are just way more engaging. Just like anybody could answer your phone as your receptionist, but you're going to find that one person who your clients love talking to. And I think that's the problem with businesses and social media. In the case of Gutenberg, where it's been a success for them, they're very good at putting out a message that's relevant to people and they care about, and it's well done and it's engaging. So
And building on
you
it.
want to come back and have that relationship. And I think a lot of the stuff that's out there is not relational at all. So they're great cases.
That's the
Or
magic.
even
That's the
products.
magic word, pretty much. Engaging. How can you engage them? And if that works, then you got it. But it's the right.
Yeah,
the
it's
right
really
way to
a skill,
engage.
I think, to be a good 140 character, especially on Twitter. Like to be good in the 140 characters when you're trying to add your own thought on someone else's original thought, you have to be pretty good.
So that brings up, you know, social media again. Keep talking about social media.
But it's like a funnel, right? Everything leads back to it.
Right. But it's given people the ability to expose, you know, bogus product, right? So if you got a really bad product, service, organization, even if you don't communicate well, or even if you do communicate well, nobody's going to care, right? So even focusing in on that and making sure that, you know, if you're helping a company or consulting or, you know, promoting or shaping a brand, making sure that the actual product, service, or organization is something worthy of advertising.
You mentioned earlier about the, that's a good point, but you mentioned earlier about the free and them do it themselves. And there's this one guy, I forget his name, he just left Crispin Porter, which is one of the larger, more rated advertising agencies, formed his own agency with a really cool name, like
Yeah, I know what you're
Vespers and Boyle. Anyway.
Victors and Spoil.
That's it, Victors and
Oh, yeah.
Spoil, which is a really cool name. I like that. But the whole reason being that this social media thing, they're specializing in it. But what they're saying they're going to do with every client is we're going to do the free thing first. So we're going to try everything we can for free. I think there's probably a fee for that. But we're going to try all the free media, all the free stuff you could do, and I've done that myself with another company I have that you know, we did everything for you, and we had huge boost in traffic, and then we didn't have the money or anything to sustain it, so it fell off. But you can do that. You can get a super boost going for free, like using free tools out there, and get your name all over the world on websites. But this is it's really the plan, and this is sustenance, the sustaining part of it that you really need to focus on. So, you know, that's kind of a little bit scary, that whole free aspect. But maybe something that we need to do too is charge a fee to try those avenues before they spend money, and that would also bring in those smaller companies too that don't have a huge budget that you know, could maybe afford a few grand for us to do the free part.
Have any of you guys had the experience of the Old Spice or whatever, where you do something, you think it's going to work, but it just absolutely takes off, or opposite, just you think it's going to do great and it just bombs, and you're trying to figure out why?
Never.
Yeah.
Only the other.
But the other way, yeah, everything's always a great success. But I mean, there's a problem. It's like anything. A fast-growing company is fantastic, but you still need to manage a fast growth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A really great, successful campaign can be awesome, but if you're selling widgets and you can't produce the widgets fast enough, now you got another problem of everybody going online and complaining.
It gets back to that the brand conversation and the consultancy right at the beginning. If you can't truly understand yourself at the beginning, you can't give the information out for a campaign or any sort of marketing initiative that could be successful, or to make it successful. You know, we need to understand that. What are your goals? What is your capacity?
Yeah.
All those sorts of things.
It's all about understanding those variables. I mean, beyond that, if you're successful, you're probably lucky. You know, it's if you can't get that information, real success is such a hit or miss thing.
I think Dave hit it on the head when he said it's about being honest.
Yeah.
You've got to be honest up front at the beginning to what you can do and who you are for it to be successful.
And you're going to get busted if you're not honest.
How do you, okay, so let's split the demographic a little bit. So we've kind of split small companies, big companies, but now you've got, I would say we're in a massive gray shift right now. You've got the older demographic who really they sort of started using computers, and our parents that used them, but Facebook is really to keep an eye on the grandkids and the kids. And then there's the young demographic that we talked about that is sharing everything online, and more is everything's on mobile device because they're basically just a small computer now. How do you reach that older demographic that is not on Twitter and Facebook? Because if you said to my parents, you know, I'm on the Twitter, Dad, they'll think you should go to the doctor.
To see something about that.
Yeah, you got to see. But I mean, the younger demographic, they're all over it. So how do you manage that? And then elusive younger demographic that is on mobile and moving and shifting between Facebook and Google Plus and, you know, different things. How do you reach them?
That's the creative media planning, isn't it?
That's knowing your audience.
There's no one
knowing
solution.
your audience,
No.
right, and then knowing what channels.
But is social the only way to reach the younger demographic?
No, goodness no.
I don't think so. Mobile is going to be massive, right? I mean, there's one thing for sure, they got a phone in their head. Right?
Then you're restricted in your creative capacities.
Right. That's, I mean, there's only so much you can show on a device.
I think there's a misconception out there to an extent from the business side of things that the older demographic isn't engaged. You know, I think we like to say it, but research shows you that otherwise.
That's where the most rapid growth is occurring. In a lot of
Oh yeah,
And they got the money.
I mean, and they do. They do got the disposable income. When we look at, you know, we do a fair amount of work in the ag sector, and when we originally started talking to clients about, you know, web marketing and online marketing, all these initiatives, like farmers don't do it. Farmers don't do it.
They've only got dial-up and they're not sitting in front of their computer.
Yeah, you hear it all the time, and we had to literally go and invest in some research for them and so on. And it came back and it said, you know, from a purchase decision of a large agricultural equipment, over 80% of people from 50 to 65 were doing their research online before they even walked into their dealer. You know,
Same as buying a car.
absolutely. But even think about it: if you're in the field And if you're, you've moved from that family farm to the family corporation in the evolution of agriculture, you're sitting in your combine that is driven by a GPS system that you're not even needing to use your hands. You just need to be in there because you're getting away from all the other hassles in life for 14 hours.
Listening to satellite radio.
Listening to satellite radio with your iPad on your lap and your iPhone beside you. You got a lot of time to get spoken to. So I think that people like to say it because it's easy to say. That generation doesn't buy into it. But if you actually dig, it's there.
It's the fastest growing market.
It is. It's
on the web, maybe not on Facebook, but I think Facebook, the older group, maybe in the 40s to 50s is the fastest growing. But but you can use traditional media to drive the seniors onto the web, where they know they can find out information. You can't generally, I find, get them to give you their credit card, to buy something online, but they'll go get the information and they can start to talk to you. Or you can start to talk to them. It's still more of a one-way thing, typically with the older group, but they are there.
And the opportunities is growing.
Well, because it's aging, but there's that group that didn't grow up with computers that is now engaging on them. And are they engaging?
It's a growing thing. I mean, they might just hear it from their kids who are now in their 30s or 40s, and they show it. They bring an iPad, and I know a few people that just showed it to their 65-year-old dad and showed an iPad, and he said, "Wow, I love it." And they actually gave him one for his birthday, and then they start to engage with it, and it's a learning process for them. But I think that's with everything, and it will just keep on growing, even with the older segment.
Yeah, my dad was 82. He bought an iPad for his wife, who's 77, and she loves it. She's obsessed with it. She mostly wanted to play Scrabble, so it's like a $500 Scrabble game. But now they're doing all sorts of things, and he's hogging it all the time. So
they're fighting.
Yeah.
Well, and for them to be able to like Scrabble, to go through the game center and play Scrabble against the neighbor down the street, or across on the other side of the world.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Blows their mind, but they can do it. Yeah.
So that brings me to an interesting point and I hear a lot about gamification. Mm-hmm. Mobile stuff it's advertising, it's marketing, but it really, engagement is about gamification. So how do you bring that into the realm? Like when you're talking to people, how do you sort of talk about that, or are you having those conversations locally?
I think maybe locally less so because budget size. So people would say the game would be on the last part of the last part of the list. We just, maybe all of the rest of you guys did too, submit an RFP to the city where they're considering a mobile game, and but they didn't want us to quote on it, talk about it, do anything with it, but just put it in the list. And the mobile game idea for them was their recycling campaign. Would actually probably be a good idea to engage people in recycling, but very few, I think, really can pay the dollars to get a game created unless it's an offshoot of something else. That, like Hydro just did an iPad game. I have it on here. It's called Hungry Hogs or something. Hungry Energy Hogs, and so it's just Angry Birds. You're shooting at the house, and pieces of the house fall off and expose places where you would lose energy, and you got to keep moving your way through all these different houses, just like Angry Birds. Like you already got the idea there. You just need to put it together. That's cheaper. I think they did that for around $5,000, the whole thing. But
I think, I'm a runner, and I'm subscribed to the Nike running, the Nike Plus stuff, and wow, that's got me. I'm in. Mm-hmm. So.
But I consider that gamification.
Right.
To me is gamification as a term.
Just getting upgraded, getting badges. I'm almost to purple.
There you go.
You know what I mean? I've been on the thing for like 3 years, and it's got me. And I used to hate Nike.
And I was on that a couple of years ago where they did a race. Where you uploaded your time around everyone in the world on the same day, did a 10K race or a 5K race, and all the results are this. You can basically see where you finished around the world.
I mean, it's permeating our ability to, we're running campaigns. We had a brainstorm last week, and we were talking about the gamification thing. Yeah, it's pretty sticky. It's a cool thing. Sure.
Because that to me is what would get people engaged. But how do how do you talk to a customer and say, you know, we're going to create a game around this? Because it does, it can, Nike Plus, people would say, well, that's not a game, but it is actually at the core.
Well, we've been avoiding the word game and gamification and just kind of making it a little more layman. You know, it's competition based. You get, you get this tribe against that tribe, and competition.
Because online coupons and downloading coupons to phones, I think that's gaming. Loyalty programs are gaming.
Look what Starbucks did with that Starbucks app to get your 30 points. I mean, how many? You just watch the people in the Starbucks line. You can see people are looking at someone's iPhone going,
Yeah.
"Wait, what's that? Their cup full?" You know? I mean, it's hilarious.
It's got to connect though, because I remember Starbucks ran a Foursquare campaign, and so I'm like, all right, I'm gonna check this out. So I checked in. If you're a mayor, you get a free coffee or something. So I managed to get mayor status at one point. Walked in and I showed the barista, and hey, look, I'm mayor, and she looked at me like I was an idiot. So point is, customer service was not connecting with the actual campaign, right?
I happened
So what
to
does
be
that
at the
do?
airport too, where it said you could take your this Q code through all the way through and get on the plane. So I thought I'm tech sophisticated, I'll do it, and I'm with two other guys who aren't, and they got their paper pieces, and I get stopped right at the security because they don't have a scanner.
Just try and win.
So and then I got no connection to the internet to get my email, the original one that he said I need to see.
Right.
And then I go to the next one, and they take my phone away from me when they're scanning, and they're all passing it down the road so that they're all looking at it, and I'm losing track of the phone. You know, technology is just, you know. And I actually got then to the gate, the same thing. We don't take that. So they're telling you Air Canada does all this, but they don't do it in Winnipeg.
So going back to what you were saying a lot earlier, right? Like just making sure you can follow through on some of those promises.
Yeah.
Well, there's lots of. We've talked to people who want to do online on mobile device, but you get to the same thing. Get to the POS.
Yeah.
They haven't upgraded their POS terminal to actually scan it, because scanning a phone, a screen that reflects back
Yeah.
when a mirror hits it, is a lot different. You need a special kind of POS terminal, a scanning system.
Yeah.
You haven't. If they haven't upgraded that, well, guess what? This is doing you no good.
You're gonna have a problem.
So, but then again, that spins back to social. So now you're going to go and complain to say Air Canada said we could do this and we can't. And it, so now you're. So how do you? Last time, I don't want to keep you guys too long. How much time do we have?
20 after 1.
What time did we say we're gonna? 2? Okay, so we got time. So how do you then, when something maybe goes wrong? Is it you most times that are saying to the customer, we've got a problem here because we're monitoring your stuff for you, and then how do you sort of?
That's where the PR should come in, and we also have PR team involved. More larger companies have their own PR team that they organize internally. PR will have to help the job.
So PR, is PR part of everybody's, or is that one of those things that the CA firm also has? Or?
They probably have something called something else. But I think most often what we do is it's in the testing, right? You've got to test these things like crazy with all sorts of devices, and if you go out there with one component not working, you can't launch that campaign. So you can't really have that issue where you can't scan it at the. Somebody along the way with the Air Canada issue made an announcement that you could do this, and they put it in the paper and everywhere, but they should have said except in Winnipeg, and I would have been fine. Because my buddies are just laughing at me, watching me.
Well, eventually they did, because when I flew out of Winnipeg last time, I checked first and said you can do it anywhere except here. All right.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
In reference to your question, Glenn, if you're asking about negative things that are being captured through social media, it sounds like that's maybe where you were going.
Yeah, what are they? Yeah.
I think one of the challenges is if the person who is managing that, whether it's they paid somebody to do it or it's somebody internally, that person has to have some degree of authority or decision-making power, because if I'm monitoring it and I see a complaint and I mail it to Leighton and Leighton doesn't have the authority, so he mails it to Dave and then it sits in Dave's inbox for 2 days, all of that, then the immediacy of it's gone. So I think the challenge is if you're working for a fairly bureaucratic company that's not very nimble, it can be a little bit of a risk because these complaints are coming in but you can't really address them. But if you've got somebody who's sort of on the front line and can make those decisions, then it's a benefit for you. So it can be a little bit dangerous in that.
Just delete it, right? Somebody just take it offline. Just delete it.
Hide posts.
We do it with a couple of national retailers that they have a dedicated person on their leadership team that is a person, to your point, that is monitoring their tweet deck and all the other things that they have to look at. But they are empowered
Yeah.
unequivocally to make a decision right there.
Well, that's part and parcel with engaging in that medium to begin with. You have to know kind of what to expect. What are your common FAQs? How do you answer them? What to happen if this situation arises? This situation arises. All those things need to be put in place ahead of time, so you're not trying to find out what to do at the time. You already know.
So, yeah, so part of the strategy planning,
It has to be, absolutely.
when, not if something goes wrong, but when something goes wrong, here's the steps we're gonna go through.
I think one of the best examples out there in the market today is Best Buy's Blue Shirt Nation. You know, I mean, you get hired at Best Buy, you're given a mobile device. In your downtime, when you're done dealing with people on the floor and stocking shelves and so on, you're to go on Twitter and or Facebook, and they tell you which the mediums, and you're allowed to answer those questions.
Yeah, I love the idea of flattening out the communications thing with all this stuff. I mean, it's the only way to go.
They've done it with their help. They do not have a helpline going.
It's all done.
It's all done on social, and it's answered by anybody in the Blue Shirt Nation that has a spare minute in their day.
Yeah, and that's part of their culture. Like it's, you want to be the person who's responded. Like you want to be the first
You wanna be
guy
the
to
one
have the right
So
answer.
so they've created that culture
Yeah.
of jump on this fast.
Yeah, but there's still a lot of other companies who Facebook might be banned company-wide. So you could never go there because they see it as like a waste of company time for people to be on it. When I think in my job, a lot of times I'll use Facebook to do quick research about maybe a potential supplier or a friend who might be a fit for something that we're doing. And we use it all the time.
All day long.
People also rely on crowdsourcing for to solve problems. Like just as Ryan was saying, instead of the company answering the questions, now we've got all the users answering the questions. And the company only comes in once in a while, maybe when there's a big issue. Like Apple's that way. Apple pretty much ignores their whole forum until something huge comes up, and then someone will post something. But you get that whole group answering questions, and it's almost like Wikipedia in a way. It resolves itself, right?
Yeah.
It becomes something true in the end. The answer's there, but it might have taken 8 or 9 different people to get to that answer. So you know, that's a real interesting component of social media, is it can just get right out away from you.
What about staff? How do you, when you're talking to customers or clients, are you telling them let your staff with Facebook and Twitter and during office time? I mean, that's probably not necessarily, it's not part of your role, but it must come up because you're talking to a client about saying, hey, we're going to use Facebook and Twitter, but really during the day we're not going to because our staff shouldn't be on it anyway. But it's 7/24, like it just never stops.
Yeah.
So how do you educate the CEO of a company who says my staff aren't using social media and we block it on their computers during the day? Well, yeah, but you want us to create a Facebook campaign for everybody else who's on there. Like, how do you sort of manage that expectation as to what that may be?
It comes down to brand culture, and as you were saying, if it's a closed environment where you're not like Best Buy, then you don't implement a social media campaign.
But everybody wants to be on social media anyway.
But if you're relying on your internal people to be, communicating or part of the conversation.
No, but just on Facebook on a regular, just people are on it all the time, right? So whether they're talking about yourself or themselves, your company or their company, how do you?
Well, they say there was a stat that was put up in the last year on something that said it was productivity in the workplace has gone down, arguably 10 to 16% or something like that because of Facebook.
Yeah, but that's part of my point. Is I mean, it's a time sucker.
I think it's interesting though, if you look at culture as it relates to brand, and it comes back to the brand strategies and whatnot, I think it really becomes the root of all the conversations. But if you look at culture in business and the companies, when you go and read the articles of the best run companies or the companies you want to work for and so on and so forth, they've got flex schedules. They're not, more and more you're getting away from that. Start work at 9, I end at 5. There's that sort of evolution. So I think when it comes to social media, that plays into those conversations. Again, it's a cultural discussion, but it's, maybe you're on Facebook at work, but you know what? You work till 6 o'clock. Your day becomes a little bit longer because you're doing some of these other things.
Yeah,
I think it's a culture conversation, but culture as it relates to your brand. And I think it comes down to those. What are the pillars of your brand? What are the key messaging that you not only want to get out to your clients on the outside, but your clients on the inside. Like the CEO is a company. You've got a client. It's the people, however many there are in your company, that work for you. And what are you getting out to them as it relates to these key messages?
I think we all take it so for granted now too. I wouldn't want to work somewhere where I wasn't allowed to use social media. I don't abuse it at work. I have to say that because they're here.
I was saying, yeah, you keep talking.
But
keep talking.
I mean, people. It would be like saying you can't have a personal phone call at work. I mean, it would almost be.
Well, there was a time.
And there was a time,
I
right?
remember when it was like, you got a personal phone call, it's like you take it on your break.
You
take
allow
a
that now?
message and-
Yeah.
No.
But it just feels like it's. Like, I almost think it's one of my rights now to have access to this. It would seem weird not to. Granted, we're a small company. It's pretty easy to tell people are working hard or not. I think it's a different
Well, you know,
scenario
I mean,
when you
in
have,
terms of what the amount of work that gets done in a given period of time, I don't think that the expectation has really changed all that much. If you can accomplish this amount within this at this level within this time period, if you've got time to be on Facebook, knock yourself out.
Right. So more of a results-based thing. Yeah, I think work culture is totally changing.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see it. We hear first in our industry, but
Well, and I'm gonna bet that if something is going wrong on Facebook or Twitter or online somehow, it's probably, in a lot of cases, it's probably the staff that are kind of bringing it up.
Oh,
to the
yeah.
CEOs to say, I was just on Facebook and we're not doing something like, this just popped up.
It's amazing how much information flows up in that sense, and if nobody's active there, you're going to miss an awful lot of stuff. And we get more information passed around the office that comes in the door that way. That's valuable information. And if there was that kind of a restriction, we'd miss an awful lot of stuff.
we just had an incident last week where, I was out at a conference and I was just browsing Facebook on the phone and found something that needed a response, sent it in right away. It was cool. It was really good that we were able to do that. Other than that, internally, we actually have our own internal Facebook social network, something that we use around the office just to promote that stuff, right? So people will do that, just to get those ideas flowing and different information coming in and out.
Creating dialogue as opposed to stifling it.
But you're right, there are companies that block the Facebook and Twitter, and we've had to work with a company where we say, okay, can you go check it out right now? Like we built this so far, they're getting something built for Facebook or whatever, go check it out. I can't, he's on the computer. There's only one computer in the building that has access, and that's maybe the VP of marketing. But you can't get in at the computer to check the proof.
Everyone's locked out.
Yeah.
Which is really silly to think about it. Everyone's got a phone on, right? So they're going to be checking that anyway.
Yeah, that's what one of my former clients does. She works somewhere where it's matted.
Yeah.
I have my BlackBerry. It's just a skirter, right? They can't block it.
So, but is that do you see that trend breaking down quickly? Like we're larger organizations, or the IT department is going to.
I think it depends who's running the company, because like Ryan said, the productivity is dropping. Some of the engineers, let's say, who are running companies, or the accountants who are running companies, are probably going to say, lock it down. We don't understand that stuff anyways. We don't see the opportunity there. Marketing does, and they're yelling at me, but shut it down. So it's hard to say. I think over time, though, it'll probably become ubiquitous, and it'll just be everywhere, like the phone.
Yeah.
It's got to do something, because it's so decentralized right now. Social marketing, social media. That there's just too many places to go. Like Pinterest just got all that interest recently, and so now Pinterest for companies. So now you got to figure out if you want Pinterest in your mix, together with Google Plus and Facebook and Twitter and just go on and on and on.
So there's got to be a challenge. How do you keep up to the continual? Because there's just all you figure. Okay, Twitter was it. Now Pinterest comes out. Like, how do you keep up? Because and where do you decide where you're gonna? It'll come back to, well, it depends on what you want to do. But what's the difference between Facebook and Google Plus and advertising on those things or marketing to those things? Do you sort of separate them out, or do they go into the social media online bin?
That's what our clients rely on us for, to have that knowledge. The worst thing in the world is if a client comes up to you and says, hey, I heard this new thing, Pinterest, or have you heard about it? We have to be ahead of them, right? So we have to know what's coming up, and not only do we have to know what's coming up, we have to know what the uses of that are and how that could potentially benefit client A, which is different than how it could benefit client B, client C, client D, et cetera, et cetera. So a large part of our job is just keeping track of those things.
It's our job to.
And understanding what the audience is.
Absolutely.
And keeping your finger on that, because particularly as they emerge, their audience demographics change weekly. It's crazy. I mean, watching just the age demographic for Twitter go like this, over the first year. It was crazy.
I think that is the biggest challenge though, is we're expected to be experts, but it's changing like this. The flip side of that is we have all these tools to become experts. So like I know for sure we're connected at least in one or two ways on social media, and so you see a lot of sharing sort of amongst your industry peer group as well, which is a huge part of learning and just constantly evolving. But I think we're always also cautious of everything as it being a fad. Like, would we have the same conversation in 2 years sitting around this table? It would be incredibly different. Facebook may or may not be part of the conversation. Pinterest may or may not be with all the copyright issues. Hard to say, but so we're always like really on board with new and exciting things, but also very aware that
With a cautious eye.
we don't want to invest a ton in this just in case, and it all comes back to what everybody said. Why would we be doing this? Like, really, what's the reason? What's the purpose? What's the benefit?
Well, and I had a conversation with somebody yesterday. Had a conversation with the CEO of one of the largest agencies in the U.S. I can't remember the exact name of it. You guys would know who the sort of top three are. And he said he asked her, like, where's this whole media thing going? And she said, honestly, we kind of know what's out there, but her response is, we're just trying to keep up. So, it's lends itself more to a reason as to why companies should be, because if they're trying to run their own business, they can't be trying to keep up to everything else that's going on at the same time. Because you just can't do everything.
And things happen so fast for us that we tend to be in response mode because it comes at you faster. You'd like to be ahead of the curve all the time, but things come at you so fast. You have to, first there's that awareness it exists, then you got to look into it and see what does it do, what's the potential, and all of this has to happen before one of your clients phones you and goes, how come we're not doing this?
Yeah. You know, are the first people to tell you about these new media opportunities are the really socially connected people in your company. So like a lot of our designers are really connected. They're always communicating back and forth, and they're firing emails around saying. The first time I heard about Pinterest was from Kara, one of our designers, about 6 months ago, and I thought it was really cute. Like it looked neat, all these pictures. Because she sent me one that was it was a female collecting clothing and stuff, and so it looked cute, I would say. But and then all of a sudden, huge spike in traffic, and now everyone's asking about Pinterest, and it happened within about 2 weeks. Like it just went, and so you got to be kind of expert. But in our last planning session, we decided that we haven't quite implemented it yet, but that we would have ambassadors attached to various social media types of tools. So that ambassador then is responsible to condense information and share it with the rest of the group. So if something new comes along, it'll be like a quick couple paragraphs. This is what it does. So the whole company can go, okay, I know at least does that. I know that much, and they can maybe make their way through that in a conversation with a client, and then Barrett can show up and tell them all about it. The details.
And he's a specialist.
Yes.
It's important. It's important to be digitally literate, right? Like we have to rely on a lot of people just to make sure that someone coming to Devin come up going, did you guys know this changed? And someone else coming up going, hey, by the way, did you know this changed over here and this is new and that's over there? Like, wow,
right now
it's almost crowdsourcing inside.
It's Facebook changing to timeline format for businesses, which is a forced turnover on March 30th. So making sure everything's going to work and look good. And then Facebook's also changing their ad structure so that now it's user content generating into your ad, which changes our function tremendously when we're looking at writing a semi-static version of copy. And we're yet to use a Facebook ad that's going to do this, but we're going to have stuff coming up in the next couple weeks that will. So it's kind of exactly like you said, it's responsive. Like, well, we're going to try it and learn and figure out, we'll solve it, but it's kind of sometimes fly by the seat of your pants.
Okay, so here's the $1 million question. 2 years from now, two things. Where are the traditional media? Because everything is feeding, every conversation we're having is feeding back to engagement and social. So where does the newspaper industry go? Where does print go? How do you engage with somebody in a radio commercial? And other than saying, visit our Twitter page or find me on the Twitter.
It won't die in 2 years, maybe 10 years. Total reach will go down for each particular traditional media type, yes, but there will be a way of using daily newspapers will actually increase their readership through the tablets. So there's always another way of of using a
Yeah.
traditional media with a new component.
Yeah,
There's-
exactly.
I think
With
the
TV viewing, there will be there's now the whole thing with the second screen, so people will still it's again engaging, viewing specific programs, engaging them. In the meantime, they have their computer and they actually chatter with other viewers of the same program, and like Survivor is doing right now. So this will just become more and more, and it's a way of
It's the norm. It'll become the norm.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that we know
more and more and more.
is that the pie is just going to be sliced into a whole bunch more pieces, and they're all going to be smaller. And those pieces will vary with time.
Yeah, gone is the 70% traditional, and that's broken up into TV, radio, newspaper. And I think it's just a more relevant mix into
Well,
far more pieces.
and really for us, it just allows us to do a better job. You know, I'm fine with that pie getting cut into more and more and more pieces, because what it means for us as an industry is we can target more and more and more effectively, to our audiences. We can tailor our messaging. We can be responsive in ways that we could never be before. So I welcome it. And I don't see, the traditional stuff isn't going to be gone. I mean, it'll diminish over time. But like every time there's a revolution, there's fire and explosions and everything, and then things start to settle down. Everything, it finds a balance point. And the media we've been using and relying on exclusively for all of these years are going to be a smaller piece, but they're going to find the right balance point in relation to the new opportunities that we have. And a few years from now, there'll be new ones again.
Yeah, I think building on his point, as marketers, our toolbox just got a little bit bigger. So now we've got a few different
better.
things to use, and better. So it just means that now we have different tools to choose from to solve this particular problem, and we pick the right ones we need to solve this client's issue, which will be different than the ones we pick to solve that
And I
client's
don't
issue.
want to see traditional media go away.
No, absolutely.
I
It still has a
want
place.
to see all that stuff stick around, because every one of those different channels is an opportunity for us to speak effectively to an audience in a certain way, given the strengths of that medium. I think it's fantastic. Bring it on.
Things can change so rapidly, though, that I'd caution even thinking 2 years ahead about traditional media, because I remember 2 years ago or 3 years ago having a discussion, a fairly heated discussion with another one of my employees or partners in another company about whether we needed to be on mobile or not. And mobile wasn't as big just 2 or 3 years ago. But now all of a sudden, you got to be on mobile. Mobile is huge. In fact, people are spending, they saw a stat, 29% of their time on mobile versus the amount of dollars that are going into mobile is only like tiny compared to it. And newspapers,
and
unfortunately,
smartphones are only 42% penetration rate.
yeah. And then on that same chart showed newspapers at amount of time, or amount of money spent up here and the amount of time spent down here. So it's the exact opposite. So you can see that something's happening big in the newspaper industry. People aren't spending the time, and they're spending all the dollars, and people aren't spending the time. What's going to happen, along the road? So these changes are dramatic that are happening. Like, I'm just thinking 2 years ago, like the arguments I had are so different from today.
But I think whether it's 2 years from now or 2 years ago, or go back to when David Ogilvy was asking questions in the late 40s, early 50s, it came down to, today we might say, how do you clearly describe or define your brand? He might have said, how can you clearly define or describe your business? And what is your plan? Those questions, I don't believe, have ever changed or will ever change, and will always be the core root of where we all start, no matter what's going on around us. And the others are just a toolbox, because I think that needs to be the core of our business and what we do to move forward. And I don't think it's changed in
No.
decades.
And I kind of hope it doesn't, because it's a neat business.
Oh yeah,
It's
absolutely.
a really, really interesting thing, and we just got more ways to do it now.
Absolutely.
Just out of also interesting, like television, I see change, and I look at what's going on with Rogers and who just bought Toronto's the Maple Leaf. Everything's moving. Seems TV is just shifting towards, if it's not live, which gives engagement, a second screen, and brings all those things into play. Do you see a big shift happening, or has that shift already occurred in TV? I know there's not a ton of Winnipeg companies doing a lot of TV, but television is really becoming all about live reality. Sort of started that in a sport, but live sport seems to be almost the last bastion of,
I hate to be rude.
No
I'm a parent
problem.
teacher.
Yeah, we're gonna
I gotta
wrap
get
up.
to. Thanks, guys. Good seeing you all. Good meeting you.
Bye-bye.
See you, Ryan. TV's a hard one. I personally probably watch next to zero commercials. PVR,
Yeah.
because I just don't. I want to be able to watch a 2-hour show in an hour and 40 minutes or an hour show in 40
But
minutes.
what about live split? That's where sports. That's where I think everybody's going to sports because
Yeah.
you're not going to PVR it because
Yeah.
the old adage of I don't want to hear the score. Don't tell me the score. Well,
I still PVR every sport though that I want to watch, and I watch it later, and I just try my hardest never.
Do you-
to hear
oh,
it. You see me doing
more
this a lot
patient
in the
than
stands. I say,
I don't know. I mean, you can see them trying things like live Twitter streams and feeds and stuff like that. I don't know how.
What about the Apple TV though? That was setting everybody up to wonder what the heck's gonna. Not the Apple TV little box, but Apple getting into the whole TV industry. That had everybody thinking, what are they gonna do to us? You know, like what they did to the music industry,
Right.
and to the book industry, and to, it goes on and on and on. So what are they gonna do to the TV industry? They may have the perfect model that advertising works in perfectly. Like right now, you know, if you go to a YouTube video that's not someone, I forget what the rules are, but if it's not copyrighted material or the opposite, if it is, you get to put an ad, they can put an ad at the front and you're forced to watch it. So all of a sudden you go into this ad, which is not so hot because you're going in handcuffed. I have to watch this ad in order to get to that video unless I look somewhere else. And so you're going in watching this ad with the feeling of, it got me, I hate this. So what kind of a mood or emotion is that going into seeing a message coming from a brand? But those things could work, you know, those things where, like on the tablet, as I was saying in Wired magazine, there's an ad right there, and I can't get rid of it until I do this, which is like paper,
Yeah.
but I still look at it, turn it, because oftentimes you don't know that it's an ad right away.
So I want to wrap up just to sort of keep time. But is there any last? You know, have we covered everything in terms of how the whole this because it's changing. Like the shift has.
Well,
It's crazy what's
I
happening.
was thinking of your business coming here, and I was like, if you look at I read this article about included Vogue magazine as an example. People pick up the Vogue magazine and they love it when it's this thick and it's got this many ads all in the front, and they're looking at all the ads and all the editorials at the back. So they're delivering to people what they want. They want the ads. So if you deliver to people what they want, your medium would work really well. So in all those mediums, we really need to deliver to people what they want, and hopefully entertain them along the way. But what they want, and they come back.
And it's turning into what they want, when they want, how they
Yeah.
want, where they want, why they want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I love scanning through your magazines because they have local ads in it. Like for the most part. I mean, when you score a national, it's great, but the local guys, it's interesting to see what they're doing. So I love your, and then of course you've got great articles too. But
Well, content, no matter what, right? Content is still.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's like saying if you can fit 140 characters, but it's about content. If your content's really good,
Yeah.
that 140 characters
Yeah.
can go a long way. If your content's garbage, I give you an essay, right? And you can, if you're not going to write something good or put content there that's no good. So whether it's advertising content, advertorial, emotional connection, whatever it is, has to be good. Okay?
One thing that we haven't touched on is ROI actually, and I don't know what you guys, but I think even with website analytics and also social media, whatever medium you're doing now for clients, whatever that call to action is, yes, there's always, how many people came down to my storefront, right? But with analytics and web traffic and interaction and then the online communication, that's giving now the client a lot of power to go, okay, well, we're going to run this campaign and we're going to invest in this, and we're going to drive people to the website or to Facebook, whatever have you. And now it's something that we can't really hide around. We can blame Glenn saying, well, your publication isn't going to the right target audience and whatever have you, or you don't have a passionate reader. But now that's kind of been removed, where it's not just, okay, let's place an ad in the Free Press because it has 125,000 circulation. It's not about that anymore. So ROI is really important because the client goes, well, you ran this campaign and one of the many objectives was to increase your Facebook followers or something, and if it didn't happen, we have to answer for that.
Yeah, that's true.
And being accountable is very important in this industry, absolutely, because we're playing with a lot of money. But it's wide open now.
And you can't hide.
But you also have to be really, really careful how you analyze numbers too.
Right.
I mean, just as we've been doing some Facebook things and just looking at the kind of numbers that we generate, and then breaking them down a little bit to see what does it really equate. I mean, do you get that like because of a specific promotion you're running, the promotion ends, and suddenly your numbers just drop like a rock. And at that point, what are those numbers actually worth? And you really look at not only what are the numbers, but what do they really mean? And it's easy for clients to look at those numbers and completely misunderstand them. And we need to have, as professionals, we need to have a good understanding of how to measure this when we're done, not just with that easiest total, but rather what does that total represent, and how do we equate that to value?
I'm interested to see where our ROI sits with social and online in another few years. We just saw an article just came through talking about the biggest brands in the world, so the Cokes, the Nikes, Old Spice, and the level of engagement in social media that they see, and it's about 1%. 2% is amazing, but 1%, once you minus out a new like, which is basically zero engagement to like something, then I'm coming back to your page, I'm commenting, I'm looking at your photos, 1%. When you look at how many people they have millions of followers. It's not a very big number at the end of the day. So it's really interesting. It's a great question. I can't wait till there's some industry standards so we can do a little bit more benchmarking. But I think a big part of it is setting the right expectation of what's the best.
Particularly at this point when it is such a big question mark still.
Yeah. Well, and the Facebook like has sort of gone, like, people aren't so enamored by it anymore. I think people might be enamored by it, but I had a conversation with someone the other day. They have 300,000 Facebook fans, and she said, "But I have no idea who they are. We don't know when they visit. We don't know anything about them. But we've got 300,000. We're the most in the industry, but we don't know anything about it. So how do you measure?"
And if there are 300,000 people who aren't buying product or who aren't doing X, then
They should check.
then you've got a big database that you can't do anything with.
And so at that point, what is the return? Who knows?
One thing that's happening to our industry, because you mentioned a little bit about the advertising industry as well, how it's changing or how it's set up right now is kind of, we've got specialists in social media forming companies, and they're small. They might be one person, one or two people. And we've got advertising agencies who are getting into the industry of social media over the last number of years. So we've kind of got this fragmentation happening. So you've got people out there pitching companies on their social media needs without any understanding of the whole brand issue and the campaign that the agency might put together, or the whole messaging track and strategy track. And they're really experts on Facebook and Twitter and those things, and they'll manage the whole thing for you, but they don't stop to think of the traditional marketing stuff, like what's the voice of the company, which equates to the brand.
And they can be really busy without ever doing a single positive thing for your brand.
Yeah, so it's weird. I think I don't know, it's one of those things where maybe we end up taking them over.
That's where I see the round of consolidation coming.
Yeah, like web companies, which you guys used to be split into two. You're a web company and an advertising agency. We were actually at one time a web company and an advertising agency in one, and we found it was kind of two entirely different cultures. So we separated them. Well, we're now full on advertising agency, and we do our programming just outside of our doors, and that made great sense. But I wonder, like, where's that going to? Who's going to be the experts? Because we still have web companies out there that are full-on web companies.
Who will still be standing?
Yeah.
Well, especially in a smaller center like Winnipeg, there's got to be some consolidation, and whether it's attrition, they just go by the wayside, or consolidation or amalgamation or mergers or whatever. But
it will happen.
But there's huge argument for specialization, because generalist advertising agencies in other larger cities don't do well. Right. In this city, that's kind of what we migrate to become, as a generalist, because you get a client, you go, wow, we got this client, they need all the generalist stuff, including the social media. So it kind of goes against that idea that you need to be a specialist, specialists. So it depends on the city size, I don't know, but all that's going to shake out.
Well, and it takes resources, right?
Yeah.
You can't be the specialist in everything. And you need a social person, you need a print, or a web, you need.
Yeah, and we found that monitoring and actually engaging clients of our customers, or customers of our clients, on a customer service basis is not a good idea for us. Like, it doesn't fit what we're expert at. We can answer somebody when their TV wasn't shipped properly or it's broken or whatever, and we can go forward it on to the customer service crew. But for us to go through there and do all that, it's just babysitting. It's like, So we thought that was a business to get into.
Resources.
No, we thought that was the business to get into. In a way, you could then go to a customer and a client, say, we can do it all. And they go, oh, really, push button, and turnkey, and they go. And then later we were thinking, they need to be inside the company. You know, they need to.
Yeah.
The voice has to come
Well,
from
it
them.
doesn't
Somebody said
scale
that.
Well, that's what I was
Oh.
talking about, the whole idea of brands abdicating,
Yeah.
or comes abdicating their brands to their agencies. That's where you start to run into problems, where you become so involved that they lose control, and then suddenly you're determining what the brand is. And it's their brand, not yours.
But I think specialist magazines will be around for a long time.
Yeah, of course, of course.
I really do, actually. Yeah, niche
Well, it's like
brand.
anything, right? Everything has a place. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of what the place is and how do you extend it. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I thank you guys very much for your time.